they're approaching athletes as influencers and giving them contracts that are akin to influencer marketing contracts, probably, which means Borderlands that I am able to get, in some cases, similar contracts to a great runner.
It's a bad runner's take. It's a bad runner's take. It's a bad runner's take. He's the Kipchoge of running back.
Yes, it's the Bad Runner's Take, coming back to you from Copenhagen, Denmark. I'm living here for the summer with my family before we move to France for the year, running on the road, though not running very much because had some crazy incidences with our kids. One kid, my youngest, tooth got infected somehow, so we had to have that urgently removed. Thankfully, it was a baby tooth. Still sucks to see a 4-year-old going through that, but thanks to the dentist, shout out. My oldest son got pneumonia. He's been in the hospital here in Denmark. I will say, though, this Bad Runner's Take, you're not looking for my exposition on healthcare in Denmark. Lots of good things to say about it, but I'll save that for another time. Just glad that my kids are okay. My oldest got out of the hospital today. Haven't been out running, but when I would be, if I would be, I'd be wearing my VKTRY Insoles. I love them. I don't like to go on runs without them. 20% off if you click the link in the show notes. Long after they're a sponsor of this podcast, I will be wearing them. I legitimately use them and run them and run in them and find them valuable. Also in my Path Projects gear, same. Those shorts that I ran Zion in, I'll continue to run in those long after I have a professional relationship with them. They're just my favorite. Click on the link in the bio there for 10% off. And also to qualify for a $100 gift card, put your email in when you click on that link in my bio, and we'll announce that winner on August 9th. So I mean, here's what the Bad Runner's Take is. It's essentially a look at what I think is like the average of the sport. If you put it in statistical terms, I'm looking at 2 standard deviations of the mean, which really means like on a bell curve and a predictable sort of distribution. I'm not remembering the exact statistical word, but something that's predictable here. You're looking to say that, let's say anywhere from 89 to 95% of the sport is average. They're not going to be on a podium unless they're running smaller races. They'll be, some of those faster runners are going to find podiums, which is awesome. And please do that. Support those smaller races. That's what I'm here for. That's really the work of Borderlands, is to grow those smaller races and make them more competitive. But this is the take, I think, of what I'm bringing to the table of someone who's not a great runner in terms of speed and efficiency. I'm a great runner in terms of my absolute love and adoration of the effort. This is a take that I think represents the bulk of us, or at least some questions that the bulk of us ask. And this Bad Runner's Take, this is a look at the industry or a look at a particular question within the sport that I have thoughts on, insight on, or just want to kind of break down with you and for you. Most of the time I'm doing interviews with people about the great races and the great courses from around the world, or asking questions like, how do I keep going when I want to quit, and getting insight from runners who've pushed through really hard times. Like, there's so many things I'm doing on this podcast. And this Bad Runner's Take is I'm looking at stuff that kind of makes more sense to contemplate for the 95% of the sport that's in the middle, that is here for the genuine love of the sport. And today's question that I'm asking is, can trail running afford sponsoring athletes? I think the reason that I think that this is interesting to me is, one, because I love sports and I love competition. When Hayden Hawks came out before Western States and said, hey, when I'm out there running, this is a paraphrase, more or less, I don't got any friends on the trail. Like, I'm there to win. I will beat them. Off the course, these are my best friends. On the course, I'm here to win. And I love that. There's this competitive spirit within trail running. There's some people making money within trail running. But there's also what appears to be some entitlement around sponsored athletes, like as if that being a sponsored athlete, being sponsored within this industry, is something that is to be expected and to be deserved, and that brands have some sort of obligation to take care of their athletes. And I don't think that this is the case. Brands don't have Adidas or Nike or Hoka. They don't have an obligation to their athletes to pick your favorite athlete from each of those. brands, they don't have an obligation, but there's some expectation around the way that brands need to be taking care of their athletes. Or even if you hear, the coaches of these teams of Adidas talking about, we're going to do this for our athletes, we're going to get health care for our athletes, we're going to do this, and it's going to be a career, and we're going to do 5-year contracts. All that's incredibly interesting, but I think if we don't look at where that comes from, what that's born out of, like from a business standpoint, I don't know that. I think we'll probably see that it's tenuous. It's maybe even precarious as to whether or not that it's something that will work ongoing. If you see the athletes that are most successful right now from a financial standpoint, and we're being purely speculative, I could be way off. And I hear that Nike's doing 6-figure contracts for their runners. Like I hear it's out there, but the runners that are making the money are all, in all likelihood, the runners that have got like the LEO stuff going on, the licensing, endorsements, and ownership. Like they're valuable enough to where they're creating something that's worth licensing. I think that might be extremely rare at this point, but optimistically, a Courtney Dauwalter or Jim could create something, could participate in something that's worth licensing to other broadcast entities, if not now, in the future. If Courtney's running the race, if Jim's running the race, if Killian's running the race, etc., then maybe could get some licensing, some endorsement deals. Of course, you see on Courtney's Instagram, like she lists all the places that are endorsing her. And then, the O being the ownership, like, Courtney's releasing shirts. She owns those shirts. She's buying them at, $12, $15 a pop. She's selling them for $35 or whatever, and she's making money off of the ownership. So the real money is being made by entrepreneurs in it, not just great athletes. Now, there are outliers. I've said Courtney's name a lot. No doubt that she's an outlier because when she's at an event, when she's doing stuff, she gets a lot of media attention. She's, been on Joe Rogan. She's been on Rich Roll, which a lot of athletes have. Tim Tollefson, for example, a lot of trail runners. But there's just this expectation that I'm seeing within trail running and within people commentating on the sport that there's some obligation to the athletes by the brands in one way or another, that they owe the athletes something. And I think I just wanted to kind of put out there like that athlete sponsorship is a marketing tactic of a brand. If, let's say, Nike gives their athletes a 6-figure deal, the expectation is that when they give them that 6-figure deal, that they're going to get something in return. They're not benevolent. This is not a 501c3 nonprofit. They're giving that money for something in return. And so the question is why would that athlete get that money? And it's almost entirely a function of marketing, and it could be I'm thinking like two lanes here. And these are broad strokes. You have a performance marketing lane where they say, hey, we'll give you $100,000, but when we spend marketing dollars, we expect, a 20x return on our marketing dollars. So if we spend $100,000, that $100,000 needs to be $2 million in terms of total revenue. So if I give XYZ athlete $100,000, because that athlete runs in our Nike Trail shoes, will we sell $2 million worth of shoes? If it's that contract's going to LeBron or that contract is going to, Steph Curry, the answer is in all likelihood, absolutely, yes. The other lane that this goes down is a brand building lane. So you've got performance marketing on one, you've got brand marketing on the other, where the goal is not necessarily to tie that directly to revenue, but it's to build the brand and to build, and a brand is trust. So you're looking to say, hey, look, this runner wears Nike shoes. Anthony Costales wears Nike shoes. Don't you admire Anthony? Now, because you admire Anthony, now you admire Nike. Or because you admire Jim Walmsley and he wears Hoka's, now you admire Hoka's. Or Wahoo. I honestly have no idea what Wahoo does. Is it an exercise bike? But Jim wears Wahoo, and because you admire Jim, now you admire Wahoo. So that's like the brand marketing approach. And so you say, you still have to be able to tie that to revenue within the company. But the reality is that if you can't make a business case for giving athletes cash and money to run, then they're not going to be getting the cash to run. And on the other end, if businesses find other ways to market, let's say influencer marketing, if let's say they just get insane traction from buying banner ads on Amazon, I don't know, that's where they'll spend the money by and large, unless outside of the brand. Like they want to look like, from a brand standpoint, they want to look like the company that is benevolent to the athlete, even though that money still requires some type of return. They're not just donating money to the pocket of that trail runner. But I think the easiest way to see it is to look at the smaller brands. Look at like, say, a Speedland or Satisfy Running. If I were to just guess, I mean, especially let's say Speedland, they're coming from brands like Puma, Under Armour, Nike, where those are brands. Those brands are building. Those brands are investing in athletes for that brand marketing lane. But they're a smaller brand, and cash is limited. And from what I understand, they're bankrolling it themselves. So it's really hard to invest in brand when you're a smaller company, because if you've got, let's say, $50,000 total to spend on marketing for the year, it's really hard to spend that on brand, because brand doesn't overtly tie to revenue, or let's say perfectly obviously tie to revenue. Like, say, if you were to spend that $50,000 on Instagram ads, where if you click on the ad, it goes to your website, then to go to the website, you can start to assess, hey, for every 100 people that go to our website, 2 people buy a pair of shoes, then you can, you can tie that money to revenue there. So you don't see a lot of the smaller brands doing the brand marketing. They're good at brand. I mean, Speedland's good at brand. Don't get me wrong. You can see them doing a really good job of building trust and selling out. I mean, they have a great influencer connection. And probably best to note is that sponsored athletes, when you're watching trail runners get sponsored, often you're not seeing a trail runner with 0 Instagram or 0 social presence, which tells you to some degree that they're approaching athletes as influencers and giving them contracts that are akin to influencer marketing contracts, probably, which means borderlands that I am able to get, in some cases, similar contracts to a great runner. So there can be a runner that podiums at a really notable regional race, and then there can be me who gets second to last at Zion, and we might have similar contracts with a brand because of our, in this example, commensurate influence. Let's put it that way. So the brands don't owe it to the athletes. In fact, the athletes, in order to sustain and maintain these contracts, have to be able to probably bring layers of value add to the table. So, and those layers of value add aren't necessarily winning the race. It's influence. It's getting eyes and ears onto the brand, and then within the contract, they probably have some sort of affiliate thing. This is why affiliate links are so important. This is why please click on mine, because the way that these people make money is you click on the link that's in their bio, and if you go to that website and you end up buying something there, and you arrive there through that link, that's how they make money, and that's pretty common within this influencer realm. And I think ultimately that the athletes are influencers. And they're being treated that way, and I bet their contracts are pretty similar. At least, I would say the bottom 90%, the top 10% are probably going to be different. So they don't deserve it. I mean, nobody deserves anything. Let's go that way. They don't necessarily deserve it. They perform well, that's great, but can they influence and drive sales? If they're in the performance marketing lane of a business, that's the one question. The other one is can they put eyes and ears onto the brand and build trust for the brand? That's the other lane that they're in. The performance marketing lane is speculative. So if you find an athlete or hear of an athlete that's in the performance marketing lane where they're looking at return on investment, they're saying if we give this athlete $100,000, can they generate $2 million in sales? Can they generate $1 million? Can they generate $500,000? Can they do anything? Does this money get us anything that we can directly tie that to? Well, if they do that contract and say, okay, this 100,000 needs to equate to 500,000 in sales, and then they don't do it, then there's, likely they're not going to get the same contract next time, if any contract at all. The brand side of things, it's got to be measured in some way, and if the athlete doesn't perform, then they don't get it. I'm not, changing the world here with this insight. But what I am saying is that the industry is small, the contracts are not large. Some brands are probably going to identify other ways where their $100,000 get them more. And I don't like that for the sport, because I am a mega fan of the sport. I love watching the elites. I was at UTMB last year. What was that, 2023? To watch Jim Walmsley. Like, I wanted to see Jim or Zach. I wanted to see the first American man cross first there. I went to the finish line, and I stood there. I got there 4 hours early thinking, gosh, I got to get a good spot. This is going to be crazy. I got to get a good spot. I got there 4 hours early and stood in the sun and listened to Corinne and Dylan's commentary, which was awesome, standing there in the sun. There was nobody there until about 15 minutes before it started to fill in. We're not a spectator sport yet. There is not demand for that. And so as such, the athletes have to drive revenue for sales of the product, because Jim's incredible performance didn't bring spectators to the sport, didn't bring spectators to the event, that the event could then go sell the TV rights to ESPN, and then ESPN could sell ads around it. Like, just none of that happened. And it is not looking like it's going to happen anytime soon. I hope that brands continue indefinitely to give runners great contracts and better contracts, but the onus is on the brand to put the right contracts in place that would allow those runners to succeed and be able to continue to train full-time and take the elite version of the sport to where it can go. As of now, though, I don't see the evidence that that sponsoring elite trail runners is sustainable in its current form. The spectator version has to grow, and I hope it does grow. But who am I? I'm just some guy sitting in Copenhagen with 3 finally healthy kids, and I'm stoked about that. I'm stoked to get out and hopefully find a rhythm of running here soon that I haven't been in. And today's my Bad Runner's Take. I've got so many other questions that I want to tend to, but I think I'm only going to do one question per Bad Runner's Take now when I have the time. And this was my question today. Can trail running afford sponsoring athletes? And my answer is, in its current form, this is not sustainable. It's speculative. But eventually, if the spectator version of the sport increases and grows, there will be bigger and better contracts. But the existing contracts, the onus is on the brands to put the right contracts in place so that the athletes can perform the way that they need to perform in order to make those contracts come back year after year after year.